Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I am joined once again by Agatha from She Wore Black podcast to talk all things cozy horror.
The levels of happiness when you asked me to do cozy horror with you, it was off the chart. I am so excited to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, we had to. And I feel like it's a trend. I don't know if it's a trend I've noticed more or something that I personally have been gravitating towards more recently.
The cozy horror as a whole
Yes.
or cozy everything?
Cozy horror.
Yeah. I well, especially during the pandemic, I went through that whole hygge, I think that's how you pronounce it, thing where you've got your candles and it wasn't even about the fad. It was about like, the world is falling apart. What can I do to to feel better? And I've talked about cozy horror a little bit, just depending on the authors, but mostly with like Travis Baldree, who came on, and we talked about cozy fantasy. And I think I've not been able to stop with all things cozy since. I mean, I'm still loving my women running across the moors and nighties and all of that stuff, but
I feel like there's a coziness in that though. Like you're in a
yeah,
big drafty house. There's like flickering candles and I'm in a nightgown. Like, okay. Okay, I feel these vibes.
this is so true. This is so true. There's so many things though related to this. Don't you think? I mean, it's like I mean, cozy mysteries have been around for a
Mhm.
long time, but cozy fantasy really picking up as well, even though that's also always been around when you look at things like Diana Wynne Jones and Terry Pratchett. That cozy vibes in literature have been around, but I'm really enjoying seeing it in horror too.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say also with your Sarah Holly episode. I mean, I've been getting more emails about like paranormal romance and like witchy romances and stuff like that. I feel like that's also having kind of its moment.
Last year, especially witches were really they exploded onto the scene. They're still very popular. In fact, in October, I'm going to be all witches. Just because I'm like, it's time. Why have I not done this already anyway? Um, but
Are you
uh,
planned all the way out till October?
yes, because yes.
I do like one season at a time and I'm stressed, like thinking just like 5 episodes ahead. I
it's
cannot imagine you.
it's my comfort, if you will. My coziness depends on knowing where I'm going. But
What is your
also,
sign?
well, I'm a Cancer. So this is
Okay.
why I've been in the world of cozy for a long time. So I mean, because we love our little homes. And back before we realized that J.K. Rowling was terrible, like I reveled in my Hufflepuffness, but so yeah, we love our little comforts, the us July babies. Late June, July babies.
Got that. I'm a Taurus, so I feel like we also big
Oh,
on the cozy vibes.
see, so it was written in the stars.
Absolutely.
That's just science, ma'am.
But it's interesting to think about. I know that's something people wonder about, like how can horror be cozy?
Oh, I've got ideas. I think, and I know I saw this on Twitter too, but I've kind of thought about this for a long time, especially having had cozy fantasy and been interested. I mean, I've been reading cozy mystery a long time too, and it's the same idea. There's a difference between comfort and cozy. So there are comfort reads, like Circe is a comfort read. When I'm knee deep in anxiety, I will put on the Circe audiobook. But that's not necessarily a cozy read by definition of like subgenre. It's just comforting to me because I know the story, I know the outcome. There's no anxiety and wondering what's going to happen. And this was actually a thing during the pandemic too. I as a librarian, I had a former librarian, I had a lot of friends ask me why their kids were reading the same books over and over. And I said, well, they do that anyway. Children go back to the same books over and over anyway. Adults do it, but kids really, really do it.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, especially when everything was so uncertain, the kids would read like even if it was several hundred pages, they would reread these books over and over. And I would tell my friends, like, let them, because they're just, they know the outcome. They're not going to this is the one thing they're not going to be anxious about, and I think that's a comfort. Whereas cozy is vibes, like, aesthetics, it's quaint, it's got, a romance is often cozy because you have the comfort of a happily ever after.
Mhm.
So I think when you have horror, you can have all the spooky elements, but if you know, for example, that you're going to have that happy ending or low stakes is another way to think
Yeah.
about it. Or even if the stakes are big, it's surrounded by humor or a love interest or things that kind of negate those big stakes.
Horror is also, I mean, like romance, trope heavy, and there is a
Oh, yeah.
comfort in like, "Okay, I know where this is going.
Absolutely. God, I love a trope.
The realtor just told me there was a murder here. Perfect. I'm primed."
Kids on bikes. Yeah, I get that. And I also feel like you were talking earlier about how there's like coziness with the big mansion with candelabras and the nighty and the fog and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, I love the woman running away from big houses. It pleases me and makes me so very, very happy.
Um, I asked for recommendations for cozy horror movies, and I was a little hesitant with horror fans because you ask horror fans what their like comfort movie is, and you might get some of the most like horrific, anxiety inducing films. And people are like, I love it. I watch it whenever I've had a bad day. Like I unwind to Midsummer. I'm like, okay, well, that's
But
you.
they know the outcome.
That's true.
That's why. That and the flower crown. That's where it all is.
Do you have elements for you that you're like, oh, this for me is peak cozy in
Yes.
horror?
Oh my gosh. Well, and I saw in your notes, and this is mine by default as well, food. Like if
Mhm.
some a lot of times if there's like something like hot chocolate, fall vibes are real big. So pumpkins and cooler weather, because cooler weather means cable knit sweaters and cardigans and, the colors of fall that make everything feel cozy in our lives because you have fires and candles and like fires meaning fireplaces, not horrifying fires.
Just some arson.
I should
I
I
love it.
should, yeah, distinguish, um, but ultimately things that make you feel safe. And so, you know, I when I talked about Sleepy Hollow, yes, there's a headless horseman murdering people, but there's pumpkins, Stephanie, there's pumpkins. And the love interest. And when you have the romance and pumpkins, it's undefeated.
Gotta have it. Yeah, I had that on my list too. I said big seasonal stuff. So fall leaves, autumn weather, snow, holiday stuff. Also like spring, summer, like beach, farmers markets type stuff.
Oh, I love a farmer's market.
Oh, yeah. Also, one of my favorite tropes for like cozy horror is like a spooky small town with like weird stuff going on. Like, give me a like short story collection about different stories in like a fictional small town. Love it.
And okay, so oh my gosh, that's a whole show right there,
Yeah.
right? The small town in like the small cozy horror town. It could be a whole
Yeah.
show.
I don't even
But
need all the stories to be cozy. Like, I feel like by default, you'll have 1 or 2. There could be some, like, freezer stories in there. But I
sure,
think just the
absolutely.
idea of a horror small town.
Well, because look, we have the aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
The aesthetic charm is an inherent part of a cozy anything. So whether it's a cozy mystery, whether it's cozy horror, cozy fantasy, you've gotta have charm, and small towns, if they're done right, will have the charm, and so we're thinking very Stars Hollow kind of towns, right? Um, but the thing with small towns is they always have secrets.
Mhm. We got into, like, more of my favorite thriller tropes there, like, it's a small town and everybody knows each other's business.
That's terrifying. I'm telling you what, I will have like, I closed the trunk of my car when I went to the grocery store, and my neighbor across the street texted me wanting to know what was going on at my house because
Oh,
she was, like, worried that something happened because she heard a big bang, and I was like, "That was the trunk of my car." So I'm like, "Mind your business." Like, I want her to look out for me, but there's limits. I need some boundaries. Yeah.
oh, for sure.
There's also, especially in these times, there's those and I've just had Jennifer Herrera on my show talking about the same thing with her book, The Hunter, because she goes back to a very quaint, aesthetically pleasing small town which has secrets, but you know, racism, socioeconomic differences, all of these other things can be played for horror, but you still have the comfort of familiarity. So you might have a neighbor like Boo Radley who could help you out, or, the little old lady you don't suspect has, she's armed and dangerous to help you out, you know, or to hurt you, either one, you know. So there's like so many options when it comes to
Oh,
what a small town can
absolutely.
bring to the table.
I did have on here too, like cozy horror movies.
Oh my gosh.
I
I
gotta start
mean,
with my all times, my Adams Family Values. Those are my like peak. Like when I want to feel cozy horror vibes,
I
that's where
think
I go.
I think that's perfect. I think that's absolutely perfect because that for me, that's Sleepy Hollow too. And I already talked about that, so I don't need to, I guess, go back into it. But yeah, it's the same where you have both the look and creepy things, but you have the humor
Mhm.
and the love story because there's definitely a love story in Adam's Family. Like, they're a peak, those are peak couple goals right there.
Oh, absolutely. Also, just their house, just the like
Yeah.
mise en scène that's like going on there, all the set dressing, all the like stuff on the walls, like it's so lived in, and there's so many just like gags and jokes and like spell potions and like books that come to life, like all kinds of stuff. The
That
design of that house is just my dream. You have one you're talking about later that also my dream house, but I'm sure you can go.
Well, I think everyone knows what that's gonna be when you say dream house. I mean, we all know the
We
practical
all know.
magic.
We all want it, and it's not real, and that makes me sad.
Listen, I don't need you spoiling my dreams.
I think the rough plans for it exist. I mean, it was like a set, like a shell, but the rough plans for it exist somewhere. We could build it.
I feel like I see that house in so many places in Texas though. That's just it's weird because it's not even like close to taking place here, but there is a lot of that look going on in a lot of our.
Really?
Yes, in central Texas especially because every town in central Texas is very quaint and adorable, very touristy. The Texas Hill Country. I mean, you go and you look, oh, fields of lavender, or look at all the bluebonnets. It's a carpet of bluebonnets, rolling hills full of bluebonnets. Um, but in the middle of all of that, yeah, you'll have these really pretty houses and of course secrets. But I feel like that house exists in my mind and there's
Mhm.
nothing you're going to say or do that's going to trample on that dream.
Oh, absolutely not. That her uh, like conservatory little greenhouse room
The
with all her little
greenhouse.
plants. Mm.
So I'm from South Texas. I'm from Corpus Christi, and there's a house on Ocean Drive. Everybody knows Ocean Drive. That's where the Selena statue is and the water. That's not on the island. That's anyway, doesn't matter. Um, there's a bunch of those kind of like huge houses like that along Ocean Drive, and there is one that has a greenhouse that everybody can see, and this statue outside that's got this like moss growing over, and it's like this woman with the wind billowing her gauzy gown and everything with moss growing all over it.
Oh,
And
perfect.
I don't want to be the stalker that like hovers outside the house, but I conveniently jogged past it or walked past it, because let's be honest, I'm not jogging very long. Um, but probably way too many times. Like Greenhouse was amazing. And so, but yeah, that goes back to okay, so there's a lot of things
Yes.
about a practical magic that are very cozy to me. Going back to the whole look of everything, you also have the comfort of nurturing mother figures. So even
Yeah.
though they lost their mother, the aunts are very nurturing, positive mother figures that have created a safe space for these budding witches, right? And then they in turn, have their children, well, Sally Owens does. But there's like the idea continues. And I also the idea that they all have agency. They have agency over everything except the fate of their love, but it's a romance, so we have the comfort of a happily ever after. So even though there are actual scary things that happen and it's witches, so it's kind of spooky, um, you have kind of guaranteed comfort with your mother figures and you have the guarantee of a happily ever after. So
Oh, and I love the
and
sister
fabulous
relationship.
clothes.
Oh my god.
I
Yeah.
hear you talking
Well
about the sister relationship, and I'm like, "I love her slip dresses."
well, it was so funny because I mean, I watch Practical Magic, like, at least once a year, like, I love that movie, but I remember watching it a bit ago, and I was like, "Oh, man, these clothes look so outdated," but now I watch it, and I'm like, "I would wear these today."
Yeah, I wore a lot of that look when it for many years, like, probably a couple decades, but, as a mom now, it's not quite so convenient to be able to wear slip dresses the way I used to when I was, like, 20. But, but there's the cardigan that you can
Mhm.
slip over it, and they have very cute cardigans on that movie,
Oh,
and
man.
that's a comfort to me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
wearing a cardigan is part of, like, feeling cozy, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
that there it is. There's the built-in next level for me.
Oh my god, and I love the ending when all the, like, PTA moms get together.
Yes.
Margot Martindale is there, character actress Margot Martindale. I love it. Anyway, I love that movie. That is, like, as I mentioned before, annual watch.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, just once a year? I feel like you owe yourself more than that.
I definitely do because I'm like I'll watch it for like my fall slate of movies, but then I'll be like, technically, this takes place during is it like spring or summer equinox? So technically, it's a warm weather movie, actually. So
So now we have to watch it again.
exactly, I have to.
Thanks.
Do I need a midnight margarita to go with it? I don't know.
There you go. Midnight margaritas are comfy. They're cozy. Excuse me, I'm going to get one right now.
Oh, I also had House on Haunted Hill.
Tell me about why you think that's cozy. I want to hear all about it.
I think just the trope of like all these people being brought into like this big house to win money and the back and forth with the husband and wife, and I don't know, I think all the character setups, you have like the narration with Vincent Price in the beginning and his like the floating head over the credits, like I don't know, I just feel like every time I put it on I want to be like under a warm blanket with hot cocoa. The remake in the 2000s I also consider cozy even though it is a bit more horror heavy. All that like dark castle era of movies I consider very cozy. That's probably conflating like cozy and comfort, but I love them.
Sometimes they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because, like, when I think about, and the movie I'm going to mention is not cozy, but there are cozy elements to it, which is um, the new version of Shirley Jackson's We've Always Lived in the Castle. Um,
I have not seen that one yet.
oh my God. Oh God, I love it so much because they did a really wonderful job. But it's also, I love mid century aesthetic on things. So, like the clothes and the wallpaper and the house is also incredible. But that house serves the same purpose as like what you're talking about, and even what we were talking about with practical magic with regard to no matter how horrible everything was outside the home, at least for most of the story, their house was their sanctuary. Um, I mean, deaths aside, for Mary Cat, and like their trio of people in the house, their house was their sanctuary, and it looked beautiful. Like I love the wallpapers, and um the clothes and just the look of everything, that she was always cooking something. So the sister's always in the kitchen.
Yeah,
Um,
the domesticity that they
yes,
yeah.
yes. So there's like that kind of thing, I think, in that
Mhm.
movie too. Oh, watch it and let me know what you think.
Okay, I will. So I had on Annabelle on here, but specifically Annabelle Comes Home, and specifically there's like one scene that is like a scary scene, like it is
Yeah.
setting up scares and there is jump scares in it. But when it happened, I was like, I just love this. This looks like the cover of like a spooky book. And it's that their car breaks down on this foggy night, and that fog is so thick around their car, and they break down in front of a cemetery, and there's like a cemetery gate in the background, and the Annabelle doll is in the back seat, and it's like a scary scene. It's very tense, like the music is ramping up, but I was like, I just love this.
And see, if it makes you smile, like I can see her smile. If it makes her smile, then there you go. That's the feeling you want from something cozy. I have one kind of, you were talking about conflating comfort and cozy, and there's one that I do that with a lot, which is Ed Wood. Because
Mhm.
I also feel like Halloween doesn't really start for me until I've seen Sleepy Hollow and Ed Wood. And there's nothing, it's not a horror movie at all, but it takes place in the horror world. Science fiction, but you've got vampira in there, and scary things happening. But I also, you have the humor, you the whole Bela Lugosi thing, like all of those are, again, it's not a horror movie, but you have enough of the horror elements in there to make it count for me, if you will. But it's the humor in there, I think, that also, it's the low stakes. I mean, it feels high stakes for him, but their lives aren't threatened necessarily. Um, but their careers are, and so they're doing everything they can. So, kind of lower stakes. There's no one chasing them with a knife, but
Yeah.
it still matters.
Tim Burton movies, I think, for me are just like that horror cozy aesthetic. Because even the like pastels in Edward Scissorhands, just like that man nails an aesthetic.
I was gonna suggest Edward Scissorhands too, but I was like, "Is that horror? I don't know." I was thinking about it before we started, because then I was like, "Well, then all of this is gonna wind up just being a Tim Burton show."
Oh my gosh. In high school, I absolutely had like a Edward Scissorhands shirt that I got from Hot Topic,
Of course.
and I wore
They
it
had
all the
all the kids
time.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I like wasn't allowed to shop there. Like someone bought it for me, and I remember it being like such a badge of honor and be like, "Oh my god, I this shirt is from Hot Topic. Did you ask? Let me tell you."
I love that so much.
It was like before he came, it never snowed, and afterwards it did.
Okay. Now I've gotta go watch this when we're done recording. I had other plans. They're canceled.
I had Trick or Treat on here, the horror anthology film, and I feel okay adding it because it was a lot of people's comment when I asked for like, what is your cozy movie watch? A lot of people said Trick or Treat. It is like a gory horror movie, but it is like Halloween all around in these like little mini movie segments.
So there's pumpkins.
Oh, absolutely there is.
So that was one of my criteria. Can I just take a moment to say I appreciate anyone who appreciates pumpkins? You know, those are good answers. I have a pumpkin patch growing in the backyard, y'all, and I've never grown pumpkins before. I was not prepared. I am so excited to enter my full pumpkin witch form. The next time you see me, I will be full-fledged pumpkin witch. I had my
Nice.
first pumpkin blossoms today.
Oh, you'll have to keep us updated.
Okay.
Also, I don't know, did you ever get into audio drama podcasts?
I did a little bit. I did Black Tapes for, like, a season, and I did, what was the one? It's a science fiction one, really. I did one season of what's that one? I think you even had it on your, we can
Welcome to
do
Night
one.
Vale?
Yes, that's it. So I did the first season of Black Tapes, and then you had Welcome to Night Vale on here. I've done that one, or at least the first season of that, but I've not continued with that because all these wonderful podcasts.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It's tough. Like between music, between audiobooks, between like podcasts, just keeping up. I loved Welcome to Night Vale. I will be talking about it later, but
That's exciting.
absolutely loved it. But there was another one that was kind of similar and kind of going into like the spooky small town that was called King Falls AM, which was these two people working at this radio station in this small town where there was like all these weird things going on and people would be like calling into the radio station all night. And I remember listening to that one a lot when I worked overnights and I like just listened to podcasts all night and I absolutely loved that one. Another one I love is Ghost in the Burbs. I don't know if you've ever heard.
No, I don't know this.
The host Liz Sauer was on Ghost Horror a few years ago. She writes these episodes about like people that contact her for like hauntings in their house. And it's kind of like being a suburban mom in like Massachusetts and also like helping people deal with like their hauntings and learning like the different stories of their houses and stuff. It's very interesting. And some of them got like dark. I think if you go like early back, you get like a lot more urban legends and black-eyed children and like aliens.
Ooh, the black-eyed children, always a winner. That's a good trope right there. So, you were talking though about this isn't a drama, but I think a lot of people that listen to your show will probably also know Lore. And
Yeah.
all of his other shows,
Yeah.
Aaron Mahnke has like a whole industry now.
Yeah.
But he came to Austin and I went to go see him live. And what the reason why I'm talking about this is not only because it's a horror podcast, but because the presentation when you see him live is very cozy. He has like a little rug and a wingback chair and like candles and all the cozy things as he reads these stories to us.
Nice. That's the thing. You gotta have like an aesthetic.
Oh yeah, it was perfect.
But yeah, with like Ghosts in the Burbs and like urban legends and black-eyed children, I'm like honestly like cryptid paranormal stuff, big cozy vibes for me. Like X-Files.
But I that makes a lot of sense though, because there's that whole like mythical element to it where
Mhm.
you're not actually gonna have, El Cucuy knocking down your window or anything,
Don't tell my mom. How else is
Um,
she gonna keep us in check?
I know, I
If
know.
not for El Cucuy and La Llorona. My mom was not above using urban legends to discipline her children.
Well, but there was no other way.
No.
There was no I mean, and for goodness sake, I mean, I went to Catholic school and even there, the whole idea of like sin is the same idea. Let's keep you in check by these
Yeah.
like scary results.
This episode is brought to you by Fangoria, the world's best horror and cult film magazine since 1979. Listeners can use code BOOKSINTHEFREEZER to get 20% off their order. That includes, of course, merchandise and first-time subscriptions and single issues of the magazine. Not only are there tons of articles and interviews about upcoming horror movies, there's a regular segment by Stephen Graham Jones all about slashers called Slasher Nation, so you're going to want a copy. So again, that is code Books in the Freezer, and thank you, Fangoria, for supporting the show. Well, should we get to some cozy books?
Always.
My first pick is from an author who had been recommended to me for a long time. And I think anytime anyone says cozy horror, this is going to be one of the authors that people will tell you about immediately. And it is Darcy Coates. And I'm so glad I finally read a Darcy Coates novel. So this is The Whispering Dead, and it's actually the first in a series called the Gravekeepers series. But it starts out kind of action packed because we're following like a girl who's being hunted by these people and she finds her way into this small town and you realize she has no memory of who she is or why she's being hunted. There's a parishioner who gives her refuge for a bit and hides her and feeds her. and evades the people that are looking for her. And he lets her stay in this caretaker's cottage over by the cemetery while she kind of like figures things out. And you kind of get this story of like a girl starting over in a small town and like she's in this little cottage and like all the little cottage things. There's like a little cat that shows up that she adopts and starts taking care of. And she starts like making friends in the small town. And while she's in this cottage, she hears something in the cemetery and she realizes that she can hear the dead. And there's like specifically one spirit that seems like it's really trying to communicate with her. And she decides that it's her mission to find out like what happened to this woman, and solve like the mystery of her death so that she can go in peace and let her spirit rest. And it's just so many like, it's kind of just like that Hallmark setup of, like, I'm in a small town now, there's, like, a budding romance, I have, like, a new friend, we go get coffee and talk about, like, the people in the small town, and also we're working together to solve the mystery of this woman's murder.
So I've not read her yet, but she's been on the like my periphery. I've been very cognizant of, of the books out there, but I haven't taken like a deep close look. So I'm very glad you recommended that because now I have to.
I have the first 3 in the series that I need to get to. I read the first one and I was like, "Love it. Love these vibes." And I know it's a bit different than her other books, like, her other books are usually like, the Ashburn house, and, like, the haunting of such and such. The common denominator is that they all have these, like, cozy vibes
Yeah. Yeah.
going on. So that is The Whispering Dead by Darcy Coates, and that is the first in the Gravekeeper series. I think all of these are gonna be room temperature just because of the type of books we're talking
Cozy.
about, but,
Yeah.
this one's room temperature.
I think all of mine are too. So the first one I have might feel obvious, and I don't know that there's a listener you have who's not already aware of Cackle. But one of the reasons why I'm talking about it anyway, Rachel Harrison's Cackle, and we could also put Bad Dolls in there, that collection of short stories she has, um, is because it's sort of definitive, if you will, even though that wasn't her objective when she wrote the book. She wrote what she wanted to write, but it has a very Stars Hollow kind of town.
Mhm.
It's witchy. And again, with witches, you have agency. So even though, the protagonist has like a broken heart and she's trying to figure herself out, um, there's still a level of independence and agency that she has, which is important to feeling cozy. She's got her cute little apartment now. She befriends another person who's witchy. We see the spooky elements that come from, well, is she a weird spooky or is she just kind of a cool spooky? you know? But there's also proper scary ghosts. Like I think some people are hesitant to call it horror, but I was like, those ghosts scare the shit out of me. And then there's also all the spiders, and you don't know if they're nefarious. Yes, she has an adorable top hat wearing spider in there, but there's
Ralph.
other I know. There's other spiders who are questionable, you know? Um, and and so anyway, it has all the vibes, and I think a lot of Rachel's stories and Bad Dolls, they walk that line too. They definitely have the horror creepy element, but there's either the humor or the community or the house or the sense of something that kind of also gives you a cozy feeling.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
wouldn't say that for the return at all.
No. Yeah, I also loved in Cackle that there's so many scenes of her, like, making bread, like, there's a lot of, like, food preparation scenes,
And
and
coffee.
yeah, I was gonna say she goes to, like, her local coffee shop and gets lattes.
Yes, this is required.
Yeah. My next pick is the book Welcome to Night Vale by Jeffrey Craner and Joseph Fink. There have been a few like fiction books that have spun off from the podcast, like Welcome to Night Vale, It Devours, The Faceless Old Woman Who Lives in Your Home. And they all have that absurd coziness. If you've listened to the show, I think it first of all, listen to Welcome to Night Vale if you haven't. Like they're very short episodes, even just like the first few, just to get a feel for like what I'm talking about. Um, but it is this world building through this like radio host talking about this desert town where basically like every conspiracy is true and everything is absurd and nothing makes sense. And I don't know why I find such a comfort in that there is just like absolute nonsense going around in this town. And that is a world building all its own.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to be said for that, where it's just so
Mhm.
absurd, it makes you kinda smile a
Yeah.
little bit, you know what I mean? There's, like where there's a sense of humor, and it can kinda laugh at itself, while holding up a mirror. It's fantastically cozy.
So in this one, we're following Jackie Fierro, who is a pawn shop owner in this desert town of Night Vale. She's given a paper that says King City by a man carrying around a deerskin suitcase. No one who comes across this man can remember anything about him. What does it mean? She teams up with Diane from the school PTA, whose son is a shapeshifter and changes form every time she looks at him. She keeps seeing her son's father. He looks exactly the same as the last time she saw him when they were teenagers. So there's some mysteries here. So can Diane and Jackie team up together to solve their mysteries together? And is the key to that in King City? And if you've listened to the podcast, there are like little cameos from the Nightville universe, including like the man who no one can remember what he looks like.
I'm gonna take a moment to say that I'm sorry I did not come prepped with these, like, professional
Oh,
summaries. Y'all, I'm winging it. Which when I was a librarian and I would do book talks, that's what I would do with the kids because they had such short attention
yeah.
spans. And so you have to be fast. So I would have like a whole stack of books
Yeah.
that somehow could be teenage punk rock fairies. And I would say, hey, y'all, you like teenage punk rock fairies? Here's 10 books that are teenage punk rock fairies. And that was really all I had to do for that. And they would attack it like lions with a wounded gazelle. And so I sometimes approach books like that on the podcast, and then so I'm all like, "She's reading this stuff, y'all," and I'm like, "This one has pumpkins."
That's how I'm going to be with the next one. So you're good.
Excellent.
Sorry. So that is Welcome to Night Vale, the novel by Jeffrey Craner and Joseph Fink, with the caveat that you should listen to one or two episodes just because they're really good.
I really enjoyed it, and actually they have it as an audiobook too,
Hmm.
so, whether you get it from your Audible or whatever, it's pretty easy to access.
Hmm.
Well, I was going to talk about Called to the Deep by Desiree M. Nicoli, and I still am. But I think all of her vibes, this isn't even going to be the only story I would suggest from her because she embraces the cozy horror subgenre description of her work because even though she does a lot of paranormal romance. I mean, this is the thing. They all kind of walk this line. Again, when you have romance, you have that happily ever after guarantee. So, what people don't realize is that romance readers also like scary things. And so they'll write their romance in a scary way. And so with Called to the Deep, she's got man-eating, very vicious, very frightening mermaids. And our protagonist is accidentally bitten and becomes one of those who then wants her the love interest in there becomes a potential snack in multiple ways.
Okay. Okay. This is like
So
the type of conflict I'm interested in.
yes, many people are. But it's kind of wonderful to see like you're reading along and you're doo, 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 this is kind of cozy, there's cable knit sweaters, there's an adorable town in Maine, all of the things, right? But then like halfway through the book, and this is what everyone says, they're like, oh my god, because then there's like all this really terrifying stuff that happens in the water with these other vicious eating mermaid, like man-eating mermaids. And actually the opening of the book is pretty scary too. So there's that one, but she's also got Given to the Ghoul out, which is a lot of fun because that was like a peak monster romance time. And that is a ghoul. So, okay, there's a town that's very Shirley Jackson, which like once every year, I think, casts someone out into the desert to where the ghouls live as like a sacrifice, and they send them out to die. And so she was actually a stranger in town and they cast her out. And the ghoul that she meets and falls in love with actually gets really pissed. And so he goes back to the town and comes back with all of their skulls and he gives them to her to plant her succulents in her garden.
Okay.
There's a sense of community. Everybody there, all the ghouls are very nice, and they all have cute gardens and, you know,
So have they
all
just
of
been
the
like this misunderstood community?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and other cast-offs, who went into the desert as the sacrifice live there as well. Like, it's
Okay.
just this kinda groovy little place, and
I thought it was like they were sacrificed, but because she was just like so hot or charming, she like won them over.
I have to go back and look now, I might be saying that, like, not remembering that right, but I feel like there's other people who were sacrificed, but he fell in love with her and, gives her the skulls of her
Oh,
enemies.
I love that. It's so adorable.
Isn't
I
it?
was gonna say
It's
that is like
true.
a fantasy of mine that I like absolutely just win a group of people over who should not like me. Very like Ted Lasso.
Aw, that's adorable.
With only my like American charm.
Now I have to and I'm not sad about this, now I have to go back and reread that because did I just invent those extra people or not? I did not invent, however, the skulls of her enemies that were used to plant succulents. Those are
I
there.
love that. Ladies, get yourself someone who's gonna get you the skulls of your enemies to plant your succulents in, okay? That's the tier we're working with here.
Don't yeah, no low bars. We want skulls of our enemies.
Okay, my final pick is Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. This was illustrated by Wendy Xu. This is one of the summer scares picks for YA. And oh my gosh, when I read this, it was so cozy. It takes place in this New England town. We're following this girl named Nova who works at her grandmother's like witchy bookshop. Um, and then her childhood crush happens to come back into town who's a werewolf and she's here to fight some evil demon that only werewolves can fight and they have to like band together against this evil. Um it's just got like so much going on with this like witchy bookshop. The grandmas are all like in sweaters because we're in New England, which I consider as someone who has never lived in New England. I feel like the portrayals of New England in fiction are very cozy. And I am waiting for all the people who live in New England to say that it is not, in fact, as cozy as it seems. Also, the Pacific Northwest. Those are like the two coziest, fictional places or, like, the way they're portrayed in fiction.
Again, the use of a cable knit sweater
Yeah,
or a cardigan is inherently
yeah,
cozy. Perfect.
absolutely. Or, like, like, gloomy parts of Europe, of course.
Don't even get me started on gloomy parts of Europe. I'm just sad now. When you talk about gloomy parts of Europe, I get sad when I think about, well, I'm in Texas and I love my state, but then it's not gloomy parts of Europe. And, I should also clarify, I don't love everything about my state, but it's a big state and I'm allowed to like parts.
That's fair.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah. Beautiful, cozy story of demons, witchcraft, love, and family. That is Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. And I think if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free, like through Comixology or whatever their like comic part of that is.
What is it? If you have what?
If you have Kindle Unlimited, I think you can get it through, I think it's called like Comixology or something
Oh,
like
fun.
that, where you can like use your Kindle Unlimited membership to read the comics.
That sounds fun. So I'm going to end mine on Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match, which is by Sally Thorne. And you mentioned earlier my episode with Sarah Hawley that I did recently. So we mentioned this and we mentioned a couple of others because spooky romances have really become a thing. And I'm not necessarily talking about like paranormal romance or witchy. I mean, witchy kind of fits in there, but there's this set in kind of rise of books that have spooky aesthetics that are romances first, but in the world of something spooky, and this is one of them. And I really, really enjoyed it. The audiobook was so fun, has a great narrator, but, you know, it's Frankenstein's, so of course they make people out of other people. But, the book opens with Angelica Frankenstein and her brother, who are both scientists, who have inherited their parents' castle, and they're over there at the church, like, looking for whoever's died recently and to see if they can salvage their bodies and use them in their experiments. And, she saw a man that she was really interested in using. And the brother and her are kind of arguing over parts because she doesn't really even want to change him. She just wants to kind of resurrect him. But the brother's like, "But I want that part and that part." And she's like, "Fine." And so she takes parts from someone else to use on this one. So he's still kind of pieced together. And it's an interesting story because you still deal with a lot of the same things that Mary Shelley was dealing with, as far as like the morality of this sort of science, and who are we to really to mess with things in this way, at the same time that she made her match, man. So so I mean, it's a really cute romance, but it is definitely in the world of spooky things. And there is, a runaway. Her brother made one that ran away,
Mhm.
and he's like lurking in the woods, and they don't know if he's looking to be a menace, to take vengeance. It's not quite that. Hers turned out to be very sophisticated and stuff right off the bat. But they don't know what's going on with this other one, so it's kind of spooky anyway.
Mm. I had seen this one around, like, I feel like I heard about it from you first. You had posted about it, and then I saw someone, like, on Book Talk talking about it, so I feel like it's, like, making its rounds right now. Is it a new release?
Newish.
Okay.
It's only a few months out. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's the spooky rom-coms. I
Mhm.
mean, there's like Suburban Hell and Love in the Time of Serial Killers, and like all of these things are coming out that are kind of
Mhm.
feeding the people's interest in both romance and spooky things.
Yeah.
You had Dana Schwartz on,
Yes.
and she
I
did
was gonna
a
add that was debating having that as one of my picks.
It would work. I
Yeah.
I don't know, I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's cozy, but I do know that it is a romance that takes place in, like, a very creepy, that Victorian body snatching
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
But like I said, I haven't read it, so I can't speak to it, but I know you had her on, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah, that was really fun. I was also thinking about adding, like, the Goosebumps, like, Fear Street. Those
Sure.
are repping my
Yeah. She's wearing her Goosebumps shirt. Do you have the high tops?
I don't.
I've seen those, and they look amazing. I came of age post Goosebumps, so by the time they came out, I was way past that, and I feel like I really missed a fundamental part of childhood
I
now.
feel like you were Christopher Pike generation though, right?
Yeah, but I didn't that wasn't in my world.
Yeah.
VC Andrews was definitely around, but it was like, if it wasn't Beverly Cleary or Judy Blume, because remember the mid-80s just didn't have a lot to offer us.
Yeah.
It was like VC Andrews or Gothics, which
Mhm.
were always fun.
Yeah.
Like Scholastic Book Fair would always have these kind of like ghost stories and stuff like that. So
But R.L. Stein has been not reissuing. He's been writing some new like editions for like
hmm.
Fear Street. And I've read a few of those and they are like such cheesy fun.
Man, I embrace the cheese.
Yeah,
Bring it. Bring it.
absolutely. I love it. It knows what it is.
Yes, Love in the Time of Serial Killers knows what it is.
Absolutely. There needs to be like a level of self-awareness.
Yeah. I'm into it. And that's what I think this whole show, I mean, like I said, having that humor element, like Sleepy Hollow knows what it is, and so it's just that's the fun and the comfort of
Oh,
it,
definitely.
and the pumpkins.
Gotta have the pumpkins. Well, should we talk chilling obsessions?
I have chilling
Oh my
obsessions.
gosh. Tell me all about it.
Well, y'all have probably heard me talk about cozy gaming, and I blame Smart Bitches Trashy Books for this whole thing that started. 'Cause during the pandemic, she was talking about a cozy game, and I hadn't played anything since the Atari, like, 1983, and I picked it up, after Smart Bitches Trashy Books was talking about it on their podcast, and, then I picked up Animal Crossing, and I've been cozy gaming ever since, but they have lots of cozy games that are like spooky aesthetic.
Mm.
And so, you'll have like Cozy Grove, which is very cute. And, it's like a little scout that lands on an island, but she's a spirit scout and she has to help these little ghost bears.
Mm.
And she catches fish and bugs and things like everything else, but like the fish she catches, it might be like the ghost of a drowned sailor or, it's adorable, but it has these things. And there's a lot of witch ones. So like Little Witch in the Woods and Witchwood is another one, Witchbrook, but the one that I'm looking forward to, and this is like an obsession that it's not out yet, but I'm just sitting there like gripping my my Nintendo Switch going, "Get up, hurry up." Um, Haunted Chocolatier. Have you heard about this one?
No. What?
Well, for people that live Stardew Valley, it is the same people that made Stardew Valley, except instead of being a farming sim, you live in a haunted castle and you have to collect the ingredients for your recipes of chocolate things, like chocolate treats that you need to sell in your chocolate shop. And it just looks so cute and spooky and adorable. And I cannot wait for that game. And in the meantime, I'm playing all these other like witchy cozy games.
That looks so fun. I follow a few people on TikTok who are into cozy gaming, and it seems really fun. And I think I would like to get into it once my youngest is out of her toddler stage where she is waiting for me to not be looking at her to like tear
Right.
something apart.
What I do is I put an audiobook in.
Hmm.
So, like, you're just doing farming things, like, but I have my audiobook going while I'm playing, and so I'm doing 2 things at once, but it's still relaxing because I'm listening to a good story while I'm, in the
Yeah.
mines or, like, watering some plants.
I love that. My chilling obsession was an audio drama I started listening to this few weeks ago, and it's called Monstrous Agonies.
What is this?
Oh, it is like the most calming. It's like a late night. Like, do you guys have Delilah there?
I don't
Delilah. Nope. Was that a
what it
Midwest thing? Okay.
what is that? I don't know.
She
Maybe we do.
she was like a radio host that would give like advice. Like people would call in and she would like take
If it's on
calls.
the radio, I don't know. Unless
Okay.
it's NPR, like, I don't know.
So it's this kind of like a Dear Abby scenario, but for creatures of the night. So these are like cryptids calling or like writing to her and sending like kind of like Dear Abby, like what should I do about this situation? And she gives this like very sweet, like thoughtful advice for all these different situations and then like humans writing in and like how should I be to like my coworker who's a creature of the night and
What's this called?
monstrous agonies. They're short episodes too.
And it's a podcast?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm in. I'm
But
in.
I love the world building. Like she read one letter where someone was complaining someone was a bridezilla. And then in the next episode, she's like, I would like to apologize to our kaiju community for the use of Bridezilla. Like, I know that was offensive.
Oh my gosh, this sounds amazing.
Like,
I
it's,
cannot wait. Okay,
yeah.
so now next time I cozy game, I might be listening to that.
She has the most soothing voice. It's just
Oh,
like
fantastic.
listeners, creatures of the night.
I'm in completely.
So that is monstrous agonies. And of course, our last tradition. Do you have a final girl song?
Ma'am, I didn't know what direction to go with. Of course I do, but there were so many options, and I picked a PJ Harvey last time, and I
Mhm.
thought, well, I can either continue because there are so many PJ Harvey options. Um, she's very morbid and it works. But sometimes I feel like a final girl needs to have a song that's like where she's kicking ass at the end as she's
Yeah.
surviving. Um, and so I went with a song where the movie involves people like kicking ass as they're trying to survive. So- which is from Desperado, the movie Desperado. Do you remember that?
A long time ago. I have not watched it
I
in a
mean,
minute.
90s.
Yeah.
It's from the 90s, and so Antonio Banderas actually sings with the band Los Lobos,
Oh,
and it's a song called Canción del Mariachi, and so, just picture me with, like, flames coming up behind me as I walk away from an explosion in the villains while this song is playing.
nice. I am
There you
loving this. Okay.
go. There's visuals, guys,
I will
visuals.
be adding it to the list. Do I need to rewatch this now?
I don't know. I mean, who knows if it even held up, but I just know that this song kicks ass.
Okay, so I don't need to rewatch it to get your context. Just listen to it
I'll
and
just send you the
imagine.
video.
Okay.
I'll send you the video of the song.
Okay.
That's good
Should I
enough.
send you the video from Annabelle Comes Home where the car is
Yes.
broken
And
down in front of a cemetery?
I'll send you, in case any of your listeners are curious, and you can put it in show notes, the Haunted Chocolatier trailer.
Okay.
And there we go.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me all things horror and cozy.
I almost want to like revisit this in October.
Yeah,
Let's see
honestly.
where we are on our cozy horror list.
Yeah, where we are in our
Let's follow up.
journey.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I love that I'm the person that you asked to join you on this particular conversation. It just made me so very
Oh, yeah.
happy. I was looking forward to it for weeks.
Got the cozy horror vibes on lock. Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Twitter at BooksFreezerPod or on Instagram at Books in the Freezer. Show notes for this episode and all previous episodes will be at booksinthefreezer.com, where you can find the titles of the books mentioned in this episode and previous episodes, as well as information on where to find us on social media, Patreon, affiliate links, different ways to show your support for the podcast, and even where to get podcast merch if that's something you're interested. So you can find all of that information again at booksinthefreezer.com. I did want to apologize for the sound a few times during this episode. I got a little animated and started speaking with my hands and bumped my microphone. I tried to edit it out as much as I could, and I did edit out quite a few of the microphone taps, but some of them were unfortunately right when I was speaking. So I'm sorry if that was something that kept popping up. So hopefully that will not happen again. Also, a note that I will be at the upcoming StokerCon that is going to be here in Pittsburgh, I think mid-June. I am very excited to finally get to meet some of you listeners, so let me know if that's something you are going to as well. I will be speaking on 2 panels. I will be on a panel Friday for Librarians Day talking about summer scares. And I will be on a panel. I don't know what day it is yet. It's not officially on the schedule, but about horror tropes, kind of like favorite and least favorite horror tropes with some fun people. So hope to see you there. I'm Stephanie. You can find me on Instagram at That's What She Read. That's with 2 A's, or on Twitter at lady_Ganya. That's LADY_GAGNON. And as always, see you next time on Books in the Freezer.